In this video, I'm gonna show you how you can take your photos from looking average to looking amazing in just a few clicks. So let's get right into it. So always the first step to my editing workflow is to pick the right images. So after I have imported all the photos, the first step is culling. So I just go through every image and pressing X to reject all the photos I don't like. I don't necessarily like the photos where the kudu's mouth is open. So I'm gonna reject those, and then I'm just looking for any other flaws, maybe out of focus, motion blur, anything like that, or I cut off part of the limb. So after just a quick first step of culling, I have 3 images that I can delete. So then you can either delete it from Lightroom or delete it from disk. I would usually delete it from disk because you don't want the photos to take up all your hard drive space, but for this video I'm just gonna remove it from Lightroom. So I'm left with these 3 images. I think I don't quite like this first one, so I'm gonna reject that one. And between these two here, the horns are just a little bit too close compared to this one where it's quite nice. So I think let's go for the first one. So I'm just deleting these other 2. So that was step 1 of my editing workflow, choosing the photo. So step 2 is now gonna be cropping the photo. So let's get into it. So then you head over to the develop tab, press on the crop button. I think it looks a bit skewed to me. Then you can straighten it up a bit. I'm just gonna give it a slight tilt begin with, something like that. Overall the crop out of camera is not too bad. We can maybe just make it a little bit tighter, something like that looks nice. So step 2 of my editing workflow is adjusting the white balance and getting the hues correct. So let's do that. I think I generally like my images a bit warmer, so I think I'm just gonna warm it up a bit. I think the tint is overall quite good, so we're gonna leave that as it is. Now we're gonna adjust the exposure of the image. Overall the camera did a pretty good job, so let's add a bit of contrast, like to reduce the highlights a little bit and lift the shadows. Bring out some detail in the face of the kudu, decrease the whites just a bit and lift the blacks. Let's quickly check the exposure. I think we leave the exposure as it is. So that is the first part of the edit done. Not a huge difference so far. Here's the before and here's the after. I think I'm just gonna slightly decrease the temperature. I liked it a bit more cooler. So continuing on, I just make my way down to the histogram. I like to add a slight S-curve, which just helps with the contrast. Then I also like to add a black fade, which means you just lift the very dark parts of the image. You don't want to go extreme. You just lift the extreme darks of the image slightly. It just gives it a cool effect. And then moving on to the color mixer. Some people like some desaturated green looks. I think I'm gonna do that slightly. Desaturate the green. I like the green's a bit more green than yellow, so let's also decrease the yellows. I see there's some red here in the ear of the kudu, so maybe by adding up some saturation of the red we can help for his ears to pop. I don't think there is a bit of orange in the image, but I think that's fine. And yes, I like to make my way down the basic adjustments and the color wheel and all these stuff before moving on to masking or everything. So with the color grading, I'm gonna add a slight blue tint, nothing much. This just gives the shadows a bit of a cooler tone. What you can also do is in the highlights warm it up a bit by applying some orange. So as you can see, this is before and this is after. It's a bit warmer, which I think is a little bit too much. Just making my way back over here, cool it down a bit. Okay, yeah, you can denoise your image and sharpen your image. We're gonna come back to that at the end. Here at the collaboration section, I like just to see what the difference does at the two extremes. I would just swipe the mouse one way and the other until I find what I like more. For example, I like more of the red primary saturation more than less, so I would maybe add a slight bit of that, just doing that with all the colors. The blue primary saturation slider is definitely my favorite, giving it a nice green and airy look, so I'm definitely gonna add a little bit of that. So after only making our way through this first part of the edit, this is how it looked and this is how it looked now. So not a major change, but masks is where we're gonna see the major difference. So here's the before and here's the after. Overall not too bad. Okay, moving on to our next phase of the editing. This is the masking section. Lightroom's masking section is quite powerful, so you can get a lot done here. So let me walk you through my thought process. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is take a radial gradient, just make it over the whole image, the cruise face in the center, then invert the selection and darkening it, making the subject pop a little bit more. Don't want to go over, so maybe just somewhere around there, using the highlights. This just helps for the subject to pop. You can also use vignetting, but I find this just to have a bit better way of doing it. You can customize it a bit more. So let's also just decrease the clarity on this radial gradient as well. Okay, so that looks, just makes the subject pop a bit more. If you press here on this eye icon, you can see what this mask does. So before the mask, after the mask, just helps the subject to pop a little. You can name your masks if you will. I generally don't do that, but sometimes I do if I want to remember what I did on this mask. Okay, so we're gonna select the brush, zoom in into the eyes and just paint the eyes with the brush. Like that, and increase the exposure slightly, lift the highlights. You can always add a little bit of temperature as well. All this is just to help its eye pop a little bit more. So as you can see here, not a major difference before and after, just helps it pop a little bit more. So I like how the image is looking, but I think there's still a few things we can improve. Let's start by adding another mask to its ears to just brighten up its ears a little bit more. Could it have beautiful ears and horns? It is, I think, definitely my favorite antelope. So you definitely want to make that ears a feature, brighten it up a bit, lift the shadows, add a bit of saturation. Don't want to overdo it, still needs to look natural. We're going to select the subject of this mask and just brighten everything up. Also add a bit of sharpening. As you can see, it generally does quite a good job, the subject selection, but it just missed a part over here and of this part of the kudu. I'm not too worried about this part, but let's just add a brush on its top part of its horn, something like this. I'm not gonna be too precise here, it doesn't matter if you're a little bit off, but you don't want to paint totally skew, something like that. Okay, this part I'm not worried about, so we're gonna increase the exposure. Don't want it looking fake, just by a slight bit to help it pop from the background, lift the shadows, to add a bit of saturation, maybe reduce the white slightly, and as well as the highlights. So that, I think, helped it pop from the background just a little. As you can see there, not a major change, but a lot of small changes help make a big difference at the end. Let's also just add a bit of sharpening. To do that, let's just zoom in. You don't want to go 100%, but maybe like, let's go 50% sharpening on the subject, like that. Okay, then I'm gonna do the opposite that I just did on the subject, on the background. So I'm gonna select background, just quickly gonna select it. As you can see, it made a little bit of a flaw on the top part of his horns as well, but that's not the end of the world. And for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Background, slightly reduce the exposure and the highlights. I think if we maybe, I don't want to have it look too yellow, but maybe add a slight bit of temperature and a bit of purple tint so that it's not too green. That looks good. So I want to do a bit of dodging and burning here, which is a technique when you add a fake light source from the one side. You want to do it from the side where the light came. As you can see here, the light came from the right hand side. So we're gonna zoom out a bit and add a radial gradient here from the side, going over the top right part of the image. Then we're gonna press on these three dots and intersect it with select background, because we don't want the subject to be affected by this mask. Then we're gonna increase the exposure, increase the highlights, increase the whites, and also slightly decrease the blacks and the shadows. everything just to give it a glowing effect. And then we're also gonna up the temperature a little bit. And then my favorite part for when doing this is you want to add some negative DAs. As you can see, this just really gives it a light effect. I think we just need to slightly add a bit more temperature and brighten it even more. So as you can see, without and with, it just gives a nice sense of light coming from the top right image of the frame. Now we're gonna do the same, but just from the bottom left. We're gonna make another radial gradient, but this time we're gonna reduce the exposure, basically doing the opposite of what we just did, just to emphasize that light even more. Reduce the exposure, reduce the whites and the shadows. Okay, that looks good. And then just another thing we can do to draw the viewer's eye into the image, we can make another linear gradient just over the bottom part of the image to darken it. Not too much. Everything you do in Lightroom, you want to make sure it looks natural. So we're going to slightly reduce the exposure. Not too much, just to make sure that the viewer's eye is focused on the main part of the subject, which is the crew's face. Then one last thing I think we must do is select the subject, intersect that selection with a radial gradient. Just select the crew's face just to brighten this area up, because this is the main part of the image. Add a bit of exposure, nothing too crazy. Lift the shadows a little bit, as well as adding some texture. Don't want to overdo anything, make sure it still looks natural. Clarity, texture and sharpness. So let's have a look. Okay, so I quite like how the image is looking. As you can see, there's a nice difference between before and after. Just one last thing I want to do is add some sharpening. So I like to zoom in and just then add some sharpening. You don't want to overdo it, as I told, just make sure it looks natural. Maybe around 50, that looks good. Then you can hold down your Alt key or Option key on Windows and drag the masking slider to see what you're sharpening. You don't want to be sharpening the whole image, only the parts that are in focus and I don't want to be sharpening. So I think we can take the masking to about maybe 75, something like that. Looks good. Then I might do some fine adjustments of the exposure, but I think that looks good. So that is all for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please hit that like button if you learned something in this video, and press that subscribe button. I have a lot of videos coming out to help you become a better wildlife photographer, and then I'll see you in one of those. Until then, why don't you watch this video as you join me in the field taking my wildlife shots.